Question.
Just a clarification. I noticed in the memorandum that part of the recommendation is that policies 103.2 and former 103.4 be deleted. That was not part of the motion. Are you going to be taking that up in a separate motion, Madam Chair, or would you like to include it in this one?
It's included.
Okay.
Mr. Williams.
Chair, thank you. Just like to congratulate Member Elsamai. You look at the testimony, there's several institutions supportive, and that's not surprising to me, but there's also not a bunch of principals sitting here saying, what about this and what about that? So congratulations. I do have a little concern about the second part of the motion, which is that this will be included in the review of the strategic plan. And I just want to know what, because the word incorporate is in there, and so how specific, what's your intent, I mean, in drafting this? I mean, that it has to be in this, I mean, are we like approving it to be in the strategic plan, period? Right.
Now, I think there are elements of the strategic plan, if I pulled it up, that already do have some benchmarks with regard to student wellness. Some of them don't have points of measurement that are as yet established, and that could be anything from stuff in the school quality survey and otherwise. So,
No, I mean, I know the subject's in the strategic
right.
plan, but how, we're saying direct, so how precise and prescriptive is the direction that we're making? That's my concern. Is it like, they gotta consider this?
Right.
Take this into account in the work that's being done on the strategic plan? Is that kind of the way it's intended?
Right. I mean, I don't know another way to put it than other to incorporate the vision and implementation of this.
No, I just want to know the intent. If that's the intent, then I'm fine. I mean,
Okay.
I just want to kind of put on the record if that's the intent, so that we don't get in a situation later on where it's saying, you know, we passed this motion and said I have to say this and that.
Right. It's not the language or anything in particular, but
Okay.
that, you know, student health services and wellness, we understand, contribute to academic achievement.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify so we don't get issues later on.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready to call for a vote here. So, all in favor? Opposed? All right, the motion has been approved. Thank you very much. And I myself want to commend Board Member Elsamai for the journey and the process of taking this forward. Thank you. Okay, board members, we're not done yet. We have our next set of board policies. Does anyone want to stand up and take a break, or I think we can move forward? All right. So please note that we have several board policies on hand that have multiple recommendation memos from the department, and I see we have Tammy Chen up here with Deputy Tammy Chen is Assistant Superintendent of the Office of Strategy, Innovation, Performance to provide the presentation on these different agenda items. So in the process, what we're planning on doing is we have action on several board policies. What we've decided we'll do is have the department make presentation on each of these policies, and the committee will go through, deliberate, and take action on each policy one at a time. Okay, so with that, Ms. Chen?
The first policy is 101.3 Student Activities Program. The department, the PIG, had suggested changing this to a policy called Civic Engagement, but after consultation, including with the State Student Council, we are recommending that we maintain a student activities policy because of its centrality to schools.
Yes. Yes, Lindsay.
So,
Mr. Williams.
I think, I don't know if it's always going to be Exhibit A, but I know in this case, I think the simplest way to state the motion is to, for the committee to approve the policy as shown in Exhibit A and recommend approval to the full board.
Sorry, so we're now in discussion. Oh, need a second for that. Okay, second. And discussion. Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The motion has been approved. We are on to our second.
Next policy is 101.11, surfing. The PIG had recommended changing this to be a broader policy on high school sports, and the department is recommending that we do deferring deferring the proposed policy, so deferring the PIG recommendations to change the policy in order to maintain the original policy on surfing.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I don't know if deferring is the right motion, Chair, because the intent is that this will not be taken up again. So I think the actual motion I'm going to make is to table 101.11, because the recommendation of the department is that we put this to rest and stand on 2180. Later on, 2180 will get renumbered into the new system, but we'll retain the surfing policy. So I think the motion I want to make is to table the proposed 101.11.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay. We're in discussion.
So Chair, just to be clear, so that this will kill that proposed policy.
Right.
And the minutes reflect that.
Mr. DeLima, can you speak in your microphone, please?
The minutes would reflect that our executive director staff would be able to renumber the 2180 to the appropriate number.
Well, in June, the committee's going to take all the policies that haven't been
And renumber
done,
them.
and they're going to get renumbered, and so it'll go into that batch.
Okay, Mr. Chun, Ms. Chun, do you have a comment?
Yes, just to note that our intention is to come back in June with a new policy that reflects what the PIG had recommended. So just
A separate
a
policy.
separate
Right.
policy.
So more umbrella policy for sports.
Correct.
But surfing will be left.
Surfing
Intact.
to be left as is, correct.
Yes. Okay, so let's vote on that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next policy.
Next policy is, subject is 102.8, student promotion, and 102.9, middle level education promotion. The recommendation of the department is to take what the PIG had suggested with additional, I'm sorry, let me just review this again. We have so many. Okay, these are two policies that deal with promotion policy. We are recommending deferring action on both policies because in favor of waiting for competency-based education to further develop in terms of the student promotion policy and the middle-level education discussion to develop further and come back to address middle-level education, to change the middle-level education promotion policy to a middle-level education policy in the future.
Okay, do I have a motion on the floor? Mr. Williams.
Chair, I'm going to start with 102.9, middle level education promotion, because I think it's less complicated. So I move to defer 102.9 for the DOE's recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
Ms. Cox is seconding that. We're in discussion.
Yeah, just quickly.
Okay.
I don't know if it was clear from what Tammy said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there's a group of middle school educators that are working on proposed draft, and I think it's, we should, I'd like to see what they come up with. So we'd be looking forward to that.
Ms. Cox,
Yeah,
I
I
have a comment.
showed this to the 3 middle school principals on Kauai and they never heard of it. So they just had a fit over what you're going to be calling core and how it would destroy some of their programs. So yes, middle school principals need to have a chance to look and talk. And I don't know what group it is, but all 3 principals on Kauai never heard of this policy.
So the PIG had recommended some changes to the middle level education promotion policy, and because the middle level principals are working on middle level education, we're just asking to keep the old policy as is for now.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor for this particular one to defer 102.9. And so I'd like to call for a vote for that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. So let's move on to 102.8.
Chair, on this one, contrary to the DOE's recommendation, my motion is to approve Exhibit B, 102.8, and recommend approval by the full board. And if, when I get a second, then I'll explain. Thank you.
Second, yes, Mr. Williams.
I think there's maybe a little confusion within in the DOE in terms of this recommendation that resulted in a deferral. So I just want to go through quickly the PIG's thinking. What you have before you in Exhibit B is from the PIG. First of all, we noticed that the current policy, 4,500, and remember that if we defer, then the current 4,500 is going to stay in place. And frankly, if you heard the presentation earlier, there's no way that there's going to be a revised policy based on competency-based education by June 30th of this year. It's pretty obvious from that presentation. So we're going to be, if we don't take action, we're going to stand back on the original 4,500. And one of the things that PIG noticed, is, it says Hawaii Content and Performance Standards, but we've already adopted the Common Core and the NGSS, and we're working on other standards. So the first change was just to change it to applicable performance standards. Whatever's been approved are the standards we're talking about. I'm going to skip the next part. I'll leave that till last. Then there was a sentence that's, I don't know where it was, but it was somewhere else in 4,500 that each student's progress shall be systematically assessed and reported. So that's not new. The PIG didn't create that, just moved it into that paragraph. And then this, there was a deletion of grade placement of students that really, in a sense, weakened the policy, but the committee felt that it was really too prescriptive. So the only sentence that the PIG added was at the bottom of the, I'm looking at Exhibit B, members. The first paragraph, the last sentence, students shall be promoted based on demonstration of proficiency with respect to applicable standards of academic achievement, character development, and socio-emotional progress. That's almost directly out of the strategic plan. So the PIG didn't create that. At the time that the PIG deliberated on this, we had already done the strategic plan, and we had already had the initial discussion on competency-based education, which at that time we were calling proficiency-based learning. And we discussed, should we try to totally rewrite the policy based on competency-based education? And we deliberately said, no, we shouldn't. The policy already says that DOE shall establish a system of student promotion based on academic performance and successful student progress toward defined benchmarks. It already says that. And so, and we noticed that the last revision was 1996, which is 20 years ago. So the policy's been in place, but the DOE doesn't follow it. So that was the PIG's approach, is we're not going to do a major rewrite. We're going to incorporate from the strategic plan. We're going to recognize the change in the standards and bring that up to date. So it's really more of a backward-looking process in terms of what's happened to date and getting it up to speed. And I think if you really look at this, why I'm making this motion in deference to the recommendation to defer, is that what the PIG produced, at least for the next 6 months to a year, however long it takes to really go forward on competency-based education, is a better statement of the policy than if we just leave it at the old 4,500. That's really the choice that's before us, and why I made the motion to go ahead and adopt Exhibit B. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Asabai.
So this one was to be deferred, and, I mean, the middle level education promotion was based on waiting for some kind of information from the work among middle level principals, and this one would be deferred based on,
No, the motion is not to defer, the motion is to adopt.
Right.
okay, I understand that,
You
but
recommended
the
deferral.
department suggested deferral based on,
Competency-based education was their rationale for
Development.
deferring. So, but Board Member Williams is saying that's a separate subject, and that this is one in which he's proposing, the only difference would be adding the
Just
character
update it.
development. Right, updating. Okay. Department, do you have any comments on that?
I think understanding that this is Member Williams was looking at this as a way to improve on the previous or the existing policy gives us a better understanding and might have affected the way we wrote the memo.
And I think Tammy and I have had discussions. I think we need to put on the record, this does not, adoption today and by the board will not create any new mandate. It doesn't. It doesn't create any new mandate. It doesn't change what's going to be done fall of 2016. I mean, I hope that the whole discussion of competency-based education will do that, but this action doesn't do that.
And we appreciate that.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so let's take a vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. So, 102.12.
102.
Oh, sorry.
Tammy needs to proceed.
Yes, Tammy's turn.
Okay, next is 102.12. This is on reporting student progress and achievement. It actually combines two prior policies. The department, if we turn to Exhibit A, the department is primarily recommending that we approve the PIG recommendations with some edits. And then I will say that in reviewing this on paragraph 5, the second sentence is redundant. So so we would recommend Exhibit A with the deletion of the second sentence in paragraph 5. It's the sentence that starts, a paragraph that begins with student attendance and general learner outcome performance ratings will appear in student evaluations. In blue.
I'm sorry, where are we looking at?
Exhibit A, look at Exhibit A.
Okay.
Paragraph 5, starting in blue, underline student attendance and general learner outcome performance ratings.
Mm-hmm.
The first sentence is correct, the second sentence is redundant. So I would recommend deletion of that.
So delete student attendance and
The second
GLOs for
sentence.
secondary schools will be reported separately. Okay, delete that. Okay.
With that, the department is primarily recommending the PIG version with a few edits, which I'm happy to speak to if anyone has questions.
So,
Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor?
I move adoption of 102.12 as shown in Exhibit A with deletion of the last sentence in the next to the last paragraph.
Okay.
second.
Seconded, okay, thank you. We're on discussion for 102.12. Mr. Williams and then Ms.
I know
Cox.
there was testimony about this at the secondary level. I think for one thing that elimination of that sentence may help a little bit, but it won't totally cure the issues that were raised. Frankly, I think that those issues are implementation issues. I mean, I don't know what guidelines the schools have, but Campbell High School was used as an example, and when I read the policy, what was described at Campbell High School is not what I expected. And I hope that that's not being done that way at all the high schools. So I would hope that the DOE would take those concerns under advisement, but for me as a member, it doesn't change my willingness to approve this policy as revised.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Cox.
Well, I do have concerns, and I'm not sure if it's implementation or if it's, since you're saying it's redundant, it's basically saying that the secondary schools are gonna, I haven't seen the secondary report card in a long time, so I don't know what all it is they have to do. So was there ever, do we have an implementation plan for this policy from years back?
I can't speak to whether there's an implementation plan for this.
So I don't really know, how it all has to be done, but extra work is not something that anybody needs to have,
So
so.
these policies were last amended in 2003. And then I guess to respond to the issue about GLOs at the secondary level, they're not included in the report card at this time. There was some consideration for requiring or being specific that GLO reporting, assessment and reporting only applies to elementary school, but we did not favor that and went with the PIG version instead because there's active discussion right now about how to look at GLOs for secondary as they relate to employability skills. And so I don't expect them to implement the same way that we do in elementary school with every teacher, reporting on every GLO. I think there'll be a different scheme for assessing and reporting that, but we think that they're really important, and so wanted to leave open how that will be implemented for secondary schools.
So is it, Madam Chair, is it out of order to ask for some kind of plan from the department on how secondary schools would do this?
No, I think, are you requesting that as a board member?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't mean this tremendous giant thing, but at least so all schools are very clear on how to do that, so it's all done the same. Because like I said, I know that one secondary school that uses the GLOs for all kinds of things on any kind of student activities and who gets to run for this and that and whatever. So I would request a short plan on specifically secondary GLOs, how to report it.
Sure. Can I just ask a clarifying question? I think the first step there might be to do a landscape scan of how this is actually done in various schools, because that was news to me about the way Campbell High School was implementing it. And I think what Tammy alluded to was interesting too, because we do have some new grant opportunities and new initiatives around attempting to measure skills that may or may not be measurable through a test score. And so that conversation is really in its early stages, but we're happy to come talk to you about it, knowing that it may not be exactly a plan, because I think the first thing we need to do is kind of level set of where we are. I mean, eventually we get to a plan, but I just don't want to get too far ahead and come up with a plan before we've had those conversations with all the folks involved.
And I'm not saying that it has to be in the 45-day thing, but I think you do need to have a plan. And whatever process you need to go through to get to it, that's what I'm requesting.
Okay, we'll take note of that. And also, I just wanted to, this is somewhat related, with the initiative of the Nahupeno A'o with the breath, which is another form of outcomes that the department has adopted. I'm wondering in the future how this actually might be expanded to be inclusive, because there are some schools that have taken initiative to use that as their glows versus the traditional mainstream one that has been developed.
So the board passed a policy as part of the policy audit to maintain the 6 GLOs as they are. There is also work on assessment for Nahopena'o. And so that is in pilot stage, and we're watching it closely and assisting and looking at how it would impact students statewide and at what point and in what way. So I think that's still under discussion and development. I don't think that the Office of Hawaiian Education, who's the lead on this, is expecting to have a recommendation until the pilot is further developed.
Okay, thank you. So I'm glad it's just part of that conversation. Okay, so I think we have a motion on the floor I'm not going to repeat it. I think you all can remember it. So let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let us move to 103.1, health and wellness, safety and accident accountability.
So this is health and wellness, and the department is recommending changes in Exhibit A, which reorganize, I think, the changes that were recommended by the PIG and takes out the references to safety and accidents.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion on the floor? Amy Alcibar.
Okay,
Board
maybe
member.
I would like to comment and provide a different motion. And so this was one of the policies that I was given for review. And so we kind of decided that the joint DOE-DOH Health and Wellness Symposium in November would be a foundation for any kind of reconsideration of this policy, but didn't bring it forward specifically, rather the guidelines that were created by a working group and were put forward in terms of implementation in 2007 until 2011. And so I do appreciate what the department actually added, which was that this policy implements relevant federal and state laws, including the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, which I think is where we run into a little stumbling block. And that is that the changing nature of the USDA guidelines with regard to accountability and reporting on health and wellness, it's slightly different, given that they're talking to districts and local education agencies across the country. Here in Hawaii, it results in a State Board of Education policy and guidelines issued by the department, created jointly with stakeholders, including the Department of Health and others in the past. So as we move forward, my recommendation is that we defer this policy because there's still some discussion resulting or coming out of the expectations from the DOE-DOH symposium in November that I don't think we have our heads wrapped around exactly in terms of the outcome of that. And I think ultimately Department of Education and Department of Health are on the same track, where we want to, we have some more specifics here in this policy, but we don't want to go overboard with any kind of implementation requirements in it, yet, make sure that this policy kind of reflects the accountability that's required of the federal law that exists in this area, and which is why we have a policy in the first place. So on that note, my motion is to defer this policy for future discussion between the Department of Education and the Department of Health on the final language, potentially the consideration of an MOU between the departments, and that we bring this back to the June 6th SAC committee for consideration.
To shorten it, the motion is to defer until June 6th.
Right. Motion is to defer until June 6th, or June 7th SAC meeting. Okay,
Yes.
do I have a second on that? Oh, Brian, you seconded. He's not part of the committee. Okay, Mr. Chunas. This has kept you at bay.
Yeah, I thought we'd be here until.
I know. Okay, so we have a second. We're in discussion on that. Okay, any comments, DOE? No comments. Okay, so let's vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion has been adopted to defer for the June 7th meeting. Thank you. Moving on, get gifted and talented.
This is policy 105.5. The department is recommending in Exhibit A some changes for formatting, clarity and consistency, but substantively no changes, maintaining what the PIG put forward.
Motion.
I move approval of Exhibit A, 105.5, and recommendation to the full board to adopt.
Okay, thank you.
One thing.
Yes.
This is not just for this, it really goes back to Amy's discussion earlier. Just to clarify, the bold blue is PIG product, italics is DOE. So the paragraph that was mentioned in the earlier discussion really came out of the PIG. But just going forward, so when you're looking at these, you're looking at where it came from, the bold blue is PIG and the italics is DOE.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So a motion is on the floor, it's been seconded, we're in discussion. Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Right?
Opposed? Okay, motion has been passed. It's passed. 105.6, career and technical education.
We are recommending the changes that are proposed in Exhibit A, which are primarily accepting the PIG edits.
Straight out of the PIG, right?
This is
With the one exception that is in the,
Oh, the diploma.
which refers to the diploma.
Okay, so a motion on the floor?
So I move approval of Exhibit A, 105.6, and recommend adoption to the full board.
Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded, we're in discussion. Okay, let me call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're moving to 105.10, programs and services for secondary alienated at-risk students.
So the department is recommending changes in Exhibit A, which are to accept the changes from the PIG, which includes changing the title.
Okay, motion on the floor.
Approval of Exhibit A, 105.10.
Been seconded, we're in discussion. Yes, Amy Alcibi.
So, one of the policies we considered earlier was, I can't remember what it was called, the disciplinary policy or something like that. And we're talking about alternative learning environments here. And I'm just wondering if this policy is intended to encapsulate those opportunities where a student is potentially going to serve an in-school suspension rather than an out-of-school suspension, and that I'm not sure, because what I see as alternative learning centers, special motivation programs, smaller academic houses, is that what this is, or is that
No.
a separate policy?
Mr. Owens, do you want to
DOE
comment?
can comment further, but as PIG's understanding is no, this is more about programmatic. It's not, what do you call that, situational. I mean, when something happens one at a time. It's not about a one at a time occurrence.
Case by case.
It's about a chronic situation, or as it says in here, where students that have trouble succeeding in a traditional environment have options for other types of programs.
Deputy, did you want to comment?
Well, I'm not sure I understood the question. So I think maybe there's a little bit of both. Like, I think they could go hand in hand when you're thinking about how to provide the right environment for a student. So when a student, if there's a Chapter 19 violation as an example, you look at that student's history, you might actually have a conversation about what's the right educational environment for that student. And so that's where you might have a dovetailing of one policy with the other.
But it's not where you send a student for a 1 day out in school.
Or a suspension, no.
That's what I'm trying to
No,
get
that's
at.
correct. It would be a programmatic decision made in the best interest of a particular
The
kid.
disciplinary event might trigger the review,
That's correct.
but it's not a program for.
It's not like send them to the ALC for 3 days instead of suspending them. It's not like that.
Okay, but in
Member
practice, thank you. In practice, that is what happens sometimes. That students who are suspended may attend the Twilight program or, some other program that the school offers. I know that's happening at Waianae Inter and Waianae High School, where, well, Waianae Inter for sure, where a student that is suspended for, drugs or other things are then able to attend the alternative school offering, which is like 2:30 to 5 on campus, just to be able to keep up with their work. So they do sort of intermingle in that way, but I guess it's a moot point if this is really supporting that. I just feel there's a lack of, maybe a lack of those opportunities across the board.
We have many policies where the practice doesn't necessarily follow the policy. This wouldn't be the only one.
Well, but it's not necessarily,
Ms. Cox?
each thing that happens is, the school has to look at that one individual thing, and that's not what this is. This is
Right.
trying to say that you have these programs available to look at when you have an incident. So if some are doing it wrong, well, some are doing it wrong, but that's not what this is about. This is saying you need to have this array of services available for a specific incident.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have some clarification on the point of this policy. Let's take this to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We're moving to special education and related services, 105.12. Do I have a motion on, sorry Tammy, I skipped over you.
The department is recommending changes in Exhibit A, and let me walk through the department's change, or let me walk through the changes. The first paragraph, which is the pink edit, just reorganizes the first paragraph into the rationale, which appears toward the end, at the end. The department is recommending that we add this statement to be explicit that special education applies to charter schools as well. Further down, number 2, based on a prior CAP recommendation, we are including CAP recommendation that came up during discussion of summer school policy, being explicit that when IEP applies, there's extended school year services provided. Going further down, there's a deletion under, which was previously number 4 crossed out because these promoting positive relationships between schools and parents are not exclusive to special education and covered by family engagement policy. Further down, flipping the page, what was previously 7, deleting the reference to centers of excellence. This is consistent with the SEAC testimony that this was done earlier but not scaled, so just taking it out of the policy. And then finally, under the rationale, elaborating the description of faith, grounding it in the relevant laws rather than just naming it. So those are the changes that are being recommended in Exhibit A.
Okay, thank you for your recommendations. Do I have any board members with a motion? Board Member Williams.
I move approval and recommendation to the board of Exhibit A policy, draft policy 105.12.
Okay, let's move to discussion. Amy,
I'm
let's
sorry.
let Member Asselby and then Mr. Williams.
I'm just looking at the SEAC recommendations. I think one of those, if the committee is willing to consider, clarify that the inclusion applies to preschool through grade 12, because how many do we have now? 8, plus expansion among charter schools, et cetera, et
So
cetera.
I think that particular one was for the other special ed inclusion policy.
Oh, just in the inclusion
Yes.
policy. Okay.
Because this
Because
one,
there's a section that I thought like under number, okay. Gotcha.
So Mr. Williams.
yeah, Chair, on that point, that first sentence that's been added by the DOE says all public school students. So that would be all grade levels.
Okay.
Chair, there was testimony suggesting that, well, the the testimonies proposal is to insert, provide teachers with adequate instructional resource preparation time and support staff to meet the individual needs of students. And it says that this is similar to a provision in 105.13 exclusion. So I looked at that draft. It has number 2, appropriate, the goal, again, it's kind of indicating the goals, appropriate staffing and adequate planning time is number 2, and then 3 is development and dissemination of teaching techniques and strategies that accommodate individual students' strengths and needs. So I'm wondering how the DOE, again, don't, Tammy and Steve, don't focus on the exact language, but the idea of inserting that a goal of, adequate instructional resources, planning time, and support staff to meet the needs of students. Is that, you find that objectionable?
No, I do not find that objectionable.
I think we want that for all students, including our special education
Pardon me?
students. We'd want it for all students across the board, not just our special education students, so there's nothing objectionable specifically.
Okay, so, Chair.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
I'll move to amend.
Okay?
I think it would be it'd become the new number 4. So it'd be before the staff development and teacher training, and then we'd renumber. In the goal set forth below, the after 3 and before 4. This would be the new 4. And the wording I would suggest that I'm putting in my motion is provide adequate instructional resources, planning time, and support staff to meet the individual needs of students.
We need a second to discuss this. Okay, we're in discussion.
I think Tammy's.
DOE, would you like to comment? Sure.
I think the question that we have is number 4 on the policy, current policy. Talks about staff development and teacher training, so I think maybe wondering whether it could be added there.
So you're proposing to add that?
It doesn't matter to me, but to me, there are 2 different things. One is the resources and one is the training. So I thought it was just more, more clarity to have a separate bullet.
Okay, so were you saying to eliminate the 4 here, or keep it and then on top of that? Okay,
Numbering.
so adding to that same number.
I was just looking at where it would be best inserted, and I was thinking it would be between current 3 and 4, which means make this 4 and renumber the rest.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Min.
To the DOE and Mr. Williams, would there be a problem if we change the word adequate to appropriate?
Not to me.
Because adequate means to me is just, appropriate would be more specific.
If there's no objection, that'll be the motion. Appropriate instead of adequate.
Appropriate or effective? Okay, appropriate. Okay, appropriate.
As
Okay.
a special ed parent, I appreciate that.
Okay. Okay, Mr. DeLima.
I support the changes being proposed, but I do want to indicate that, when we talk about providing appropriate support for special education teachers, I cannot emphasize the difficulty and challenges that special education teachers have each and every day in our classrooms. And sometimes service providers, the people who provide speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, sometimes they even try to get the special education teacher to do more that is appropriately should be provided by the providers per se. So the demands of these special education teachers are very significant. And again, not going over this matter over and over again, but the bottom line is our student achievement in that population is not performing well. So I've said it before that I think we're in a crisis, and I think this emphasis on providing appropriate resources is something very important, and because all students need adequate resources, appropriate resources, and legislative support to the department is necessary. But the truth of the matter is, a large segment of our student population is having a very difficult time in terms of student achievement. And I appreciate the emphasis and support, and we need to focus on that population to at least bring them up to par where we're not right now. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, board members. So what we need to do is a vote on the amendment to change Mr. Williams's motion from adequate to appropriate.
That was, everybody agreed on that. It's just a motion to insert that.
Okay. So the motion is to insert the line that Mr. Williams proposed between number 3 and 4. Do we have a second? That was already, we just need to vote. Okay, so let's vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion is passed. Now we need to vote on the final product. I thought we just voted on the final product, but okay, so we're going to vote on the final product and restate and make sure we're all on the same page.
A as revised.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we're moving to inclusion.
This is policy 105.13. The department had prepared a recommendation, which is on Exhibit A, which primarily accepted the changes of the PIG, since we have received testimony from SEAC and are therefore prepared a draft that we just distributed that is responsive to the SEAC testimony, and the changes in response to the SEAC testimony are indicated in yellow on this sheet, and I'm happy to summarize them if you would like.
Okay, I've had a chance to look them over and see that the general request from SEAC has been incorporated in this revised vision.
So I move approval and recommendation to the board of revised Exhibit A, policy 105.13, inclusion.
Okay, good. So we're in discussion. You have a comment, Ms. Cox?
I like it.
Okay, I like that answer. So thank you to the department for being so responsive to SEAC's testimony and really incorporating their key points. Okay, so I think we're ready for a vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving to class size. Got 2 more board members.
Policy 106.2 on class size. Department is recommending the changes that are in Exhibit A, which is accepting the PIG's revisions with some edits for clarity and consistency.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor?
Yes, I move approval of Exhibit A and recommendation to the full board for policy 106.2, class size.
Okay, thank you. It's been seconded and we're in discussion now. Yes, board member Williams, excuse me, DeLima.
I got no problem with the adoption, but I was somewhat concerned about the testimony regarding how we calculate class size. I know when we first got on the board, Mr. Williams made an effort to get information about how many actual teaching positions were not actually teaching, and I believe that it came out to be that teachers in the teaching positions were actually teaching, and it was, so I am somewhat bewildered by the testimony that kind of indicates the class size is basically including counselors, librarians, etc. So, and maybe we don't have to do it today, but I would like to understand what the formula is to calculate compliance with existing policy and law. And we can perhaps do it offline, but I just want that information. If you have it right now, I'll take it, but if we don't, we can get the accurate information.
Tammy, do you have a response to that?
Class size is calculated differently for different purposes. What HST was referring to is the contractual, the way we calculate for the purpose of compliance with the collective bargaining agreement, which is what they stated in terms of all students compared with, it's a calculation statewide, all students and teachers. I think we would report back to you later, at a later time about, for the purpose of compliance with this policy, how it's calculated. I can say that we have run some analysis based on course registrations, so course registrations for this school year, so that we have some information about that, looking at class size from that perspective, if the board is interested at this time. Otherwise, we might have a longer discussion at a later time.
Okay, Board Member Williams.
Just one thing on the question of the term optimizing versus reducing, that actually came from the PIG, not from the department. As you notice, it's in blue. And you know, what we're basically thinking, I mean, there's some obvious things. If you have a secondary class, a social studies class of 40 students, we'd be talking about reducing. Optimizing would be reducing. But it's not always reducing. I mean, you can have a small school with a science class of 3 students because that's all that there are, and it really would be better to have more students in a class if you could find a way to do it. So optimizing is not, we didn't view it as a weakening, or that we're backing away from any commitment to reduce class size where they're clearly too big. Still, optimizing in all those circumstances still is going to be reducing, but optimizing we just felt was a better way to approach the whole thing. It's an educational, what's the optimal size educationally for the academic benefit of the students to be in. So that's where that word came from, and it's not intended to back off of any of the importance of class size. There's testimony about caps, and I would be very reluctant to do that at this time. I mean, there are a lot of issues, but to just insert that kind of language now, we're going to have major budgetary implications, and frankly, it really would go to how weighted student formula is used. There are a lot of the testimony included things like librarians, registrars. Those schools need those. By the way, there are some schools that are reducing, like they don't have a librarian. To me, they should have, but they use it for other purposes. But they also, Mr. Lima was talking about their principals, and with the approval of the SCCs, they create resource teacher positions and other kinds of teaching positions. They're not necessarily teaching full-time, and that puts a class size burden on other teachers. Those decisions are made at the school level, and but if we put a cap on a lot of those positions that those schools feel they need, they'd have to eliminate them. They have to put those teachers in classrooms, and some of the schools don't have the classroom. So, I mean, this is not to negate the importance of that testimony, but it's not just a simple thing to put a cap. There is also a collective bargaining implication, because often, I don't know if they do it every cycle, but most collective bargaining cycles, the union proposes class size language that would put caps and things. So I just think we need to be cognizant of this issue, and I think, as Deputy mentioned earlier in regard to another question, we probably need to assess, we need to find out, what the situation is in the schools, what kind of sizes we're talking about. Do we really have classes of 50 for science and language arts in secondary schools? And if we do, and if one school has 50 and another school has 25, why? I mean, they're both operating under weighted student formula. I mean, those kind of questions I think we need to pursue. But I wouldn't want to add caps to this policy at this time.
Okay, Board Member Hasselby.
Just to give a practical example, in my experience sitting on the school community council at my son's elementary school, as well as the experience of 3 kids going through that same elementary school. I mean, because it is strictly enforced, maximum class size for K-2, that is what principals have to adhere to, and they do. The second that you have another option in 3rd grade, because teachers are the largest part of weighted student formula, it goes up. And the first thing my now 5th grader said when he went to 3rd grade, how was your first day of 3rd grade? It was super crowded. Why? There's 28 kids in my class. Oh, interesting. He noticed that, that very significant change where it went from 25 to 1, I think it was lower actually for him in K-2, maybe closer to 20. And so it does impact kids, it does impact teachers, but it very significantly also impacts budget, with which administrators are having to make very tough decisions about. So that's all I wanted to add, was just my practical day-to-day experiences, how this actually, what occurs in public schools when you have a policy like this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions regarding this policy? Yes, Mr. Horner.
Just point out, the word that is used quite a bit is empowerment, and empowering the principal specifically, and that, to me, this policy does that. It allows, it gives direction, but it doesn't give mandatory numbers, because every school has some uniqueness, communities, etc., and it allows professionals to be professional, and that's what the assumption is. That doesn't mean we should backtrack and people do what you inspect, not what you expect sometimes, so going out and making sure it's all pulling those through. I appreciate the PIG's work on this and giving that kind of flexibility to the folks in the field to make professional decisions. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Horner. So what I'm just hearing is, again, the need to follow up on what is happening in the department in terms of implementation and assessing the landscape with this, because there's questions about how these numbers are determined. Okay, so let's just bring this to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Let's move to the last policy, 106.3, admission and attendance and compulsory school attendance.
So I move approval of Exhibit A, Policy 106.3, admission and attendance. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
Oh, Tammy.
Department recommends Exhibit A, which is primarily going with the PIG's recommendation to combine what was previously Policy 4140 and 4145. And then there were some changes that are requested because of our consultation with the Attorney General's office in regards to enforcing student attendance and filing non-attendance petitions. So those changes are reflected in Exhibit A.
Okay, motion on the floor now. Your
I
turn.
move approval of this 106.3 and recommendation to the full board.
Okay, it's been seconded. Okay, discussion? All right, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, board members, for this marathon SAC meeting. It is 1:16. Meeting is adjourned.